Picture this. You're on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's been 3 months since you've seen land, and you open your last barrel of hardtack biscuits only to find them crawling with maggots and weevils. What do you do? If you're a pirate in the 1700s, you don't throw them away. You eat them anyway, bugs and all. And here's the kicker. Those disgusting rigmeng insects might have actually saved your life. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most disturbing yet fascinating aspects of pirate life that Hollywood never shows you. We're talking about the absolute nightmare that was eating on a pirate ship, where moldy bread was a luxury, drinking water turned green with algae, and yes, pirates literally ate bugs to survive. But before you click away in disgust, stick around because the real reasons behind these horrifying food choices reveal survival strategies that were actually brilliant for their time. When we think of pirates, we imagine swashbuckling adventures, treasure chests overflowing with gold, and endless barrels of rum. The reality? Most pirates were slowly starving to death while fighting off diseases that would make their teeth fall out and their skin literally fall apart. Food preservation in the 18th century was primitive at best, and when you're stuck on a wooden ship for months at a time, with no refrigeration, no fresh water source, and limited storage space, every meal became a gamble with death. The average pirate voyage lasted anywhere from 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer if they were unlucky. During this time, they had to survive entirely on whatever food they could cram into the ship's hold before setting sail. There were no McDonald's drive-thrus in the middle of the Caribbean, no grocery stores on deserted islands. What they brought with them was literally all they had, and when that started to rot, spoil, or get infested with insects, they had two choices: eat it anyway or starve. Let's start with what pirates considered their staple foods, and trust me, none of this would pass a health inspection today. The foundation of every pirate's diet was something called hardtack, also known as ship's biscuit or pilot bread. These weren't the flaky, buttery biscuits you're thinking of. Hardtack was basically a thick, rock-hard cracker made from nothing but flour and water, baked until it was dry enough to last for years without spoiling. These biscuits were so hard that pirates often had to soak them in water, rum, or whatever liquid they had available just to make them soft enough to chew without breaking their teeth. A single piece of hardtack could be stored for decades if kept dry, which made it perfect for long sea voyages. But here's where things get interesting and disgusting. Hardtack was like a 5-star hotel for insects. Weevils, which are small brown beetles about the size of a grain of rice, absolutely loved hardtack. They would burrow into the biscuits, lay their eggs, and turn each piece of bread into their own personal nursery. When pirates cracked open their hardtack, they would often find it riddled with holes and crawling with tiny bugs. The smart pirates learned to tap their hardtack on the table before eating it, listening for the sound of insects scurrying around inside. But here's the thing that might surprise you. Many pirates preferred their hardtack with bugs in it. Why? Because the presence of weevils actually meant the hardtack still had some nutritional value. If the insects were thriving in the bread, it meant there were still nutrients for them to eat. When hardtack became so old and depleted that even the bugs wouldn't touch it, that's when pirates knew they were in real trouble. Salt pork and salt beef were the other main protein sources on pirate ships. These weren't the tender, juicy cuts of meat you'd find at a barbecue restaurant. We're talking about chunks of meat that had been packed in so much salt that they looked more like leather than food. The salt preservation process would suck out all the moisture and most of the flavor, leaving behind something that could survive months in a ship's hold without rotting. Pirates would have to soak these hunks of salted meat for hours before cooking them, just to make them edible. Even then, the meat was often so tough and salty that it was barely recognizable as food. Many pirates compared eating salt pork to chewing on old boot leather, and that comparison wasn't far from the truth. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say, the bugs in the biscuit. Insect infestation wasn't just an occasional problem on pirate ships, it was guaranteed. The warm, humid conditions below deck created the perfect breeding ground for all kinds of creepy crawlies. Weevils in the hardtack, maggots in the meat, and various beetles and moths throughout the food stores were as common as seawater. At first, most new pirates would try to pick out the bugs before eating their food. They would spend precious time in candlelight, carefully examining each bite, flicking away insects and brushing off larvae. But experienced pirates quickly learned that this was a waste of time and energy. More importantly, they discovered that eating the bugs actually provided crucial nutrition that their limited diet was lacking. Insects are incredibly rich in protein, containing all the essential amino acids that the human body needs to survive. A single weevil contains about 6% protein by weight, along with important fats and minerals. When you're living on nothing but hardtack and salted meat for months at a time, those little bugs represented a vital source of nutrition that could mean the difference between life and death. Many veteran pirates developed what they called bug blindness. They simply stopped seeing the insects as something disgusting and started viewing them as part of the meal. Some pirates even claimed that weevils improved the flavor of hardtack, adding a slightly nutty taste to the otherwise bland biscuits. Whether this was true or just psychological adaptation to a horrible situation, we'll never know for sure. The practice became so common that pirates developed their own terminology around it. They called weevil-infested hardtack loaded biscuits, and there are historical accounts of pirates actually trading their bug-free food for the insect-rich versions because they knew it would keep them healthier. If you think the food situation was bad, wait until you hear about what pirates had to drink. Fresh water was the most precious commodity on any pirate ship, more valuable than gold or rum in many situations. The problem was that fresh water couldn't be stored for long periods without becoming contaminated with bacteria, algae, and other microorganisms. Pirates stored their water in large wooden barrels, but these barrels weren't airtight, and they certainly weren't sterile. Within weeks of leaving port, the water would start to turn green with algae growth. After a month or two, it would develop a slimy consistency and a smell that could make grown men vomit. But this disgusting green slimy liquid was often the only source of hydration available. To make matters worse, the wooden barrels themselves would start to rot and decay, adding splinters and wood particles to the already contaminated water. Pirates would often have to strain their drinking water through pieces of cloth, trying to filter out the worst of the debris and slime before forcing themselves to drink it. This is where rum comes into the story, and it wasn't just for getting drunk and singing sea shanties. Alcohol, particularly rum and beer, was much safer to drink than water because the alcohol content killed many of the harmful bacteria and microorganisms that made water so dangerous. Pirates weren't drinking rum because they were party animals. They were drinking it to avoid dying from dysentery or other waterborne diseases. The British Navy actually recognized this problem and instituted a daily rum ration for all sailors, including a half pint of rum mixed with water called grog. Pirates adopted similar practices, often mixing their contaminated water with rum or beer to make it safer to consume. Here's where the pirate diet gets really scary, and where eating bugs actually became a life-saving practice. The combination of preserved meats, hardtack, and limited fresh produce created a perfect storm for nutritional deficiencies, particularly a lack of vitamin C. Without adequate vitamin C, pirates would develop a disease called scurvy, and it was absolutely horrifying. Scurvy doesn't kill you quickly. It slowly destroys your body from the inside out. It starts with fatigue and weakness, which most pirates attributed to the hard work of sailing. Then your gums start to swell and bleed, your teeth become loose and eventually fall out, your skin develops dark spots and bruises that won't heal, and old wounds start to reopen spontaneously. As scurvy progresses, your joints become swollen and painful, making it difficult to work the ship's rigging or fight in battles. Your hair starts to fall out, your skin takes on a yellowish tinge, and you become susceptible to every infection and disease. In the final stages, internal bleeding causes massive organ failure, and death becomes inevitable. What makes scurvy particularly cruel is that it's completely preventable with just a small amount of fresh fruit or vegetables. A single lime or orange contains enough vitamin C to prevent scurvy for weeks. But fresh produce was almost impossible to keep on long sea voyages, and most pirates had no understanding of the connection between diet and disease. This is where eating bugs inadvertently saved lives. While insects don't contain large amounts of vitamin C, they do contain small amounts of various vitamins and minerals that weren't present in the pirates' regular diet. Those weevils in the hardtack, the maggots in the meat, and even the occasional cockroach or beetle provided trace nutrients that helped stave off the worst effects of malnutrition. Pirates who embraced the eat everything mentality often survived longer voyages in better health than those who tried to maintain more civilized eating habits. It wasn't that bugs prevented scurvy entirely, but they provided just enough additional nutrition to buy more time and reduce the severity of symptoms. When food supplies ran dangerously low, pirates had to get creative, and by creative, I mean absolutely desperate. They would catch and eat seabirds when possible, including albatrosses, gulls, and petrels. These birds were tough and fishy tasting, but they provided fresh meat and crucial vitamins that weren't available in preserved foods. Some pirates became skilled at catching sea turtles, which could provide fresh meat for days and were much more palatable than most of their other options. Turtle eggs were considered a delicacy and were rich in nutrients that helped combat malnutrition. The challenge was actually catching these creatures while at sea, which required skill, luck, and calm waters. Fish were an obvious source of fresh food, but catching them consistently while sailing was much harder than you might think. Pirates weren't sport fishermen with modern equipment. They had to make do with basic hooks and lines, and fish don't always cooperate when you need them most. Plus, many pirates were surprisingly bad at fishing, having spent most of their lives on land before turning to piracy. When things got really desperate, pirates would resort to eating leather goods like belts, boots, and even parts of the ship's rigging that were made from treated animal hide. They would boil leather for hours to soften it, then chew on it for whatever minimal nutrition it might provide. Imagine being so hungry that a leather boot starts to look appetizing. That was the reality for many pirates during extended voyages. Some pirate crews even resorted to eating sawdust mixed with water to fill their stomachs, though this provided no nutritional value and often caused intestinal problems. The psychological effect of having something in your stomach, even if it wasn't really food, helped some pirates cope with the constant hunger. What's fascinating about pirates and their relationship with food is how quickly human psychology adapts to extreme circumstances. New crew members would often be shocked and disgusted by the eating habits of experienced pirates, but within weeks or months they would be doing the same things. Pirates developed a mindset that modern psychologists would recognize as cognitive restructuring. They literally changed how they thought about food to make survival possible. Instead of seeing maggots as disgusting parasites, they learned to view them as protein. Instead of considering weevil-infested hardtack as spoiled food, they saw it as enhanced nutrition. This mental adaptation was crucial for survival because disgust and revulsion actually consume energy that starving people can't afford to waste. Pirates who couldn't overcome their food-related disgust often ate less, became malnourished faster, and were more likely to die during long voyages. Experienced pirate captains understood this psychology and would often eat the most disgusting food first in front of the crew to demonstrate that it was safe and acceptable. This leadership by example helped new crew members adapt more quickly and maintained morale during the worst food shortages. From a modern medical perspective, the pirates' instinctive eating habits were often surprisingly sound, even though they had no understanding of nutrition science. Eating insects provided essential amino acids, minerals like iron and zinc, and small amounts of various vitamins. The practice of consuming everything, including the bugs in their food, helped prevent some of the more severe forms of malnutrition. However, their diet was still fundamentally flawed and dangerous. The lack of fresh fruits and vegetables meant that scurvy was almost inevitable on long voyages. The high salt content of preserved meats caused its own health problems, including kidney damage and high blood pressure. The contaminated water led to frequent bouts of dysentery and other intestinal diseases. Modern nutritionists estimate that the average pirate consumed only about 60 to 70% of the calories needed for the physical demands of life at sea. They were essentially in a state of chronic semi-starvation, which explains why successful pirate crews would desperately seek fresh supplies whenever they encountered merchant ships or made port. The insect consumption, while gross by modern standards, actually represents one of the few aspects of the pirate diet that modern science would approve of. Insects are now recognized as a highly sustainable and nutritious food source, rich in protein and requiring far fewer resources to produce than traditional livestock. The flip side of this nutritional nightmare was what happened when pirates successfully raided merchant ships or captured vessels carrying fresh supplies. These moments were like winning the lottery, providing access to foods that could quite literally save lives. Successful raids might yield fresh bread, fruits, vegetables, properly preserved meats, clean water, wine, and other luxuries that seemed impossible after months of hardtack and bugs. Pirates would often gorge themselves on fresh food after a successful raid, their bodies desperately craving the nutrients they had been missing. Merchant ships carrying sugar, spices, and other valuable cargo were particularly prized because these items could be used to make the pirates' regular food more palatable. A small amount of sugar could transform disgusting hardtack into something approaching edible, while spices could mask the awful taste of rancid meat. Some of the most successful pirate crews were those that specifically targeted ships carrying food supplies rather than just gold and jewels. A ship full of fresh provisions could keep a crew healthy and fighting ready for months, while gold couldn't fill empty stomachs or prevent scurvy. The Golden Age of Piracy began to decline in the early 1700s, and with it, the need for such desperate survival measures. Improved food preservation techniques, better understanding of nutrition, and more efficient shipping routes gradually made the pirate lifestyle less viable and less necessary. The development of citrus preservation methods and the discovery of the connection between fresh produce and scurvy prevention revolutionized long-distance sea travel. Ships began carrying lime juice and sauerkraut as scurvy prevention measures, earning British sailors the nickname limeys. Modern pirates, the few that still exist, have access to canned goods, refrigeration, and global supply chains that make the extreme dietary hardships of their predecessors almost unimaginable. The days of eating weevil-infested hardtack and maggoty meat are thankfully behind us. The story of pirates eating bugs isn't just a gross historical curiosity. It's a testament to human adaptability and the lengths people will go to survive in extreme circumstances. These men and women, whatever their moral failings, demonstrated an incredible ability to adapt their psychology and behavior to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. Their willingness to eat anything edible, including insects, helped them survive in conditions that would kill most modern people within weeks. They developed survival strategies that were surprisingly sophisticated, even if they didn't understand the science behind why they worked. Today, as we face global challenges around food security and sustainability, some of the lessons from pirate survival strategies are surprisingly relevant. The idea of eating insects for nutrition is no longer just a desperate survival measure. It's being seriously considered as a sustainable protein source for the future. So the next time you're complaining about airplane food or a restaurant meal that's not quite to your liking, remember the pirates who considered themselves lucky when their hardtack was only half full of weevils. They turned one of the most disgusting aspects of sea travel into a survival advantage. And in doing so, they showed us something profound about human resilience and adaptability. The strange reality of food on pirate ships reminds us that luxury and comfort are recent human innovations, and that our ancestors, even the criminal ones, possessed survival skills and mental toughness that most of us can barely imagine. They ate bugs, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And in doing so, they revealed something remarkable about what humans can endure when survival is on the line.